The moment Delilah Davis stepped through the glass doors of Quentin Pharmaceuticals, a curious tingle shot down her spine. Maybe it was the grandeur of the marble-floored lobby or the hushed reverence with which the receptionist greeted her, but something told her this job would change her life in ways she couldn't yet fathom. "Miss Davis, welcome to Quentin Pharmaceuticals. Mr. Emerson is expecting you." The receptionist's voice was velvet smooth, practiced in the art of greeting important people. Delilah, with her event planning portfolio clutched tightly against her chest, certainly didn't feel like one of them. "Thank you," she said, trying to mask her nerves. "15th floor, right?" "Yes." "His assistant will meet you at the elevator." As Delilah rode upward in the glass elevator, watching the city shrink beneath her feet, she mentally rehearsed her pitch for the company's annual charity auction. Landing this contract would be a game-changer for her fledgling event planning business. Delightful details. After 3 years of birthday parties and corporate luncheons, planning a high-profile charity event for one of the country's leading pharmaceutical companies would put her firmly on the map. The elevator doors slid open, revealing a sleek, minimalist reception area. A woman with razor-sharp bangs and an equally precise pantsuit stood waiting. "Miss Davis, I'm Vivian, Mr. Quentin's executive assistant. Please follow me." Delilah's heart thumped harder. "Mr. Quentin." "I thought I was meeting with Marcus Emerson from the PR department." Vivian's expression remained neutral. "Change of plans. Mr. Preston Quentin prefers to oversee this year's auction personally." Preston Quentin, the billionaire CEO himself. At 34, he had transformed his father's modest pharmaceutical company into a global powerhouse specializing in rare disease treatments. His face occasionally graced business magazines, always serious, always distant. "I'm not prepared to meet Mr. Quentin," Delilah admitted, suddenly aware of her sensible but hardly designer outfit. Vivian's lips twitched. "No one ever is. Don't worry, he doesn't bite." They approached an imposing black door at the end of a long corridor. Vivian knocked twice before pushing it open. "Mr. Quentin, Delilah Davis is here about the charity auction." The man behind the desk didn't look up immediately. He was tall, even-seated, with broad shoulders stretching his tailored navy suit. Dark hair, slightly too long for strict corporate standards, fell across his forehead as he studied the document before him. When he finally raised his gaze, Delilah was struck by eyes so intensely blue they seemed artificially enhanced. Preston Quentin stood, and Delilah had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. At 5'4", she was used to looking up at people, but Preston's 6'3" frame made her feel particularly diminutive. "Miss Davis," he said, his voice deeper than she'd expected. "I've heard promising things about your work." Delilah's professional instincts kicked in despite her surprise. "Thank you, Mr. Quentin. I'm honored to be considered for your event. Please sit." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "I'll be direct. Our annual auction raises funds for rare disease research. Last year's event was—" He paused, searching for the right word, "adequate. This year I want exceptional." Delilah nodded, setting her portfolio on his desk. "Exceptional is what I deliver. May I ask why you're handling this personally?" "Most CEOs delegate charity events." Something flickered in his expression. "Amusement, perhaps. This foundation funds research for conditions like the one that took my mother. I don't delegate what matters." The personal admission surprised her. "I understand. My portfolio includes the gala I organized for Children's Hospital last spring. We raised over $300,000, exceeding their goal by nearly 40%. Preston opened her portfolio, scanning through her past events with focused attention. His fingers, she noticed, were elegant but strong, occasionally tapping the page when something caught his interest. "Your aesthetic is consistent," he observed. "Elegant but not pretentious. I like that." Delilah relaxed slightly. "Thank you. I believe charity events should feel special without being wasteful. Every excessive dollar spent on decor is one less dollar going to the cause." His eyes met hers, a new respect visible in them. "Exactly my thinking. Tell me, what would you do differently from last year?" For the next 45 minutes, they discussed ideas. Delilah outlined her vision for an interactive auction experience where guests could meet researchers and patients benefiting from the Foundation's work. Preston challenged certain points, but not dismissively. He seemed genuinely interested in her reasoning. "What about entertainment?" he asked. "Last year's string quartet was predictable," Delilah suggested. The corner of his mouth lifted. "I was going to say sleep-inducing, but yes, predictable works." Delilah smiled. "I'd recommend something unexpected but tasteful. Perhaps a jazz ensemble that begins traditionally, but incorporates modern elements as the evening progresses, like how medical research builds on tradition, but pushes boundaries." Preston leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her skin warm. "That's clever symbolism." "I try to make every element meaningful," she said. "This isn't just about wealthy people buying auction items. It's about connecting them to your mission." He nodded slowly. "You understand exactly what I want." Something in his tone made the statement feel weighted with additional meaning. Vivian appeared at the door. "Mr. Quentin, your 3 o'clock conference call is ready." Preston looked genuinely disappointed. "Already?" He turned to Delilah. "I have many more questions. Are you free for dinner tomorrow? We can continue discussing the auction." Delilah blinked, caught off guard. "Dinner? Unless you prefer a daytime meeting. I assumed evenings would be easier with your schedule." It sounded logical enough, though she'd never had a client suggest dinner for a planning meeting. "Tomorrow evening works." "Excellent." 7 o'clock at Oriole. Vivian will confirm the details." He stood, extending his hand. "I look forward to it, Miss Davis." His hand enveloped hers completely, warm and surprisingly calloused for a CEO. "As do I, Mr. Quentin." "Preston," he corrected. "If we're working closely together, formality seems unnecessary." Delilah nodded. "Then I'm Delilah." As Vivian escorted her back to the elevator, Delilah tried to process what had just happened. She'd pitched to executives before, but never one who'd made her pulse quicken like this. It was just business, she reminded herself. A significant contract, nothing more. But as the elevator descended, she couldn't help wondering why Preston Quentin, who could have delegated this task to anyone, wanted to discuss centerpieces and auction items over dinner. What Delilah couldn't know was that Preston was asking himself the same question as he stared out his office window, watching her small figure exit the building 15 floors below. For the first time in years, he'd acted on impulse, and he wasn't entirely sure why. "That went well," Vivian observed, returning with his conference call notes. Preston turned from the window. "She's different, thoughtful." "And pretty," Vivian added with uncharacteristic boldness. Preston gave her a sharp look. "Her appearance is irrelevant. Her ideas align with my vision for the Foundation." "Of course," Vivian replied, not bothering to hide her knowing smile. "That's obviously why you're taking her to Oriole instead of having a standard meeting in the conference room." Preston ignored the comment and prepared for his call. But throughout the afternoon, his thoughts kept returning to intelligent green eyes and a smile that had temporarily made him forget he was Preston Quentin, the man whose name appeared on the building. The next evening, Delilah arrived at Oriole 15 minutes early, her nervous energy making it impossible to wait any longer. The restaurant was every bit as elegant as its reputation suggested, all warm lighting, hushed conversations, and waitstaff moving with balletic precision. "I'm meeting Mr. Quentin," she told the maitre d'. "Of course, Miss Davis. Mr. Quentin has requested a private table. Please follow me." She was led to a secluded corner with a view of the city lights. Preston was already there, standing when he saw her approach. He'd exchanged his business suit for dark trousers and a charcoal sweater that somehow looked more expensive than the suit. "Delilah," he greeted her, pulling out her chair. "Thank you for joining me." "Thank you for the invitation," she replied, settling into the seat. "This is quite a venue for a business dinner." Preston smiled slightly. "I find good food facilitates good ideas. Have you been here before?" "No. Event planners usually eat standing up in venue kitchens, sampling the menu for clients. Then I'm glad to provide a proper dining experience." He signaled to the sommelier. "They have an excellent wine selection, if you're interested." Delilah nodded. "I'd like that." Once they'd ordered, Preston deferring to the chef's recommendations while ensuring Delilah's preferences were considered, he turned the conversation to the auction. "I've been thinking about your interactive concept," he said. "I'd like to expand on it. What if we created experiential auction items, not just things to buy, but unique experiences related to our research?" Delilah leaned forward, intrigued. "Like what?" "Like a day in our research labs, working alongside scientists developing treatments, or traveling to meet families whose lives have been changed by our medications." "That's brilliant," Delilah said sincerely. "People remember experiences more than possessions." "It would create lasting connections to your cause." Their wine arrived, a rich red that Preston insisted she taste first. As the evening progressed, their conversation flowed easily between auction planning and more personal topics. Delilah learned that Preston had taken over the company at 27 when his father retired, and that he'd personally pushed for research into rare conditions after watching his mother suffer from a disease with no treatment options. "It must have been intimidating," Delilah said, "taking over at such a young age." Preston's fingers traced the rim of his wine glass. "It was. Everyone was watching, waiting for me to fail." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "What about you? What made you choose event planning?" Delilah smiled. "I've always loved creating experiences that make people feel something. In college, I planned my roommate's surprise engagement, seeing how those moments stayed with them. It just clicked that this was what I wanted to do professionally." "Creating memories," Preston mused. "That's not so different from what we do, trying to create more good moments for people who might otherwise have fewer of them." The parallel surprised her. "I hadn't thought of it that way." "Tell me about your family," he said, signaling for another bottle of wine. "Not much to tell. Only child. Parents divorced when I was 12. Dad's in Seattle, mom's in Florida. We talk weekly, visit on holidays." She took a sip of wine. "What about siblings? Do you have any?" "A younger sister, Penelope. She's a marine biologist in Australia. We're close, though we don't see each other often enough." As their entrees arrived, Delilah noticed a subtle shift in Preston's demeanor. He seemed more relaxed, less the imposing CEO and more simply a man enjoying dinner conversation. When he smiled, really smiled, not the polite version she'd seen in his office, small lines appeared at the corners of his eyes, softening his features. "I have to ask," she said after finishing her perfectly prepared sea base. "Why are you personally involved in planning this auction?" "Surely you have more important things to do." Preston considered her question. "Most people wouldn't dare ask me that." "I'm not most people," Delilah replied, the wine perhaps making her bolder than usual. "And I need to understand my client's true motivation to deliver the best event." He nodded appreciatively. "Fair enough. The official reason is that our foundation's work is personal to me. The unofficial reason. He hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. The truth is, I've been dissatisfied with how disconnected I've become from the human side of our work. I spend my days reviewing reports and financials, but rarely interact with the people we help. The admission felt intimate somehow, like he was sharing something he rarely voiced. That makes sense, Delilah said softly. It's easy to lose sight of purpose when you're focused on spreadsheets. Exactly. This auction is my way of reconnecting. He paused, watching her. But I must confess, I had another reason for wanting to meet with you tonight. Delilah's pulse quickened. Oh, I saw your proposal before our meeting. It was already the strongest. But I wanted to meet the person behind those ideas. His gaze was direct, unwavering. I'm glad I did. Heat crept into Delilah's cheeks. Was he flirting with her? Or was this simply how billionaires talk to people they found professionally competent? Well, she said, trying to maintain her composure, I'm glad we had this opportunity to align our visions for the event. Preston smiled as if he knew exactly what she was doing, retreating to professional language. Indeed. Speaking of which, when can you start? You're hiring me. Delilah couldn't hide her surprise. Don't you need to discuss it with your board or PR team? I make these decisions. He stated it as simple fact, not arrogance. Unless you're not interested, I'm very interested, she assured him quickly. I just expected more. Process. Preston shrugged one shoulder. I've learned to trust my instincts. They're rarely wrong about people. When dessert arrived, a shared chocolate soufflé that the chef insisted they try, Delilah found herself telling Preston about her struggle to build her business, about the clients who had taken chances on her, when she had more enthusiasm than experience. So basically, she concluded, I owe my success to people who trusted me before I had proof I could deliver. Like I'm doing now, Preston asked, a hint of amusement in his eyes. I have a portfolio now, she countered. It's not the same, true, but I'm still trusting my gut about you. The way he said it made her wonder again if they were still talking about business. When the evening finally wound down, Preston insisted on seeing her to her car. The night air was cool, a welcome contrast to her wine-warmed cheeks. Thank you for dinner, she said as they approached her modest sedan. It was unexpectedly enjoyable. High praise, he said with a small smile. I'm glad we're working together, Delilah. The way he said her name, giving weight to each syllable, sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the temperature. We should set up a proper meeting with your team, she said, suddenly needing to re-establish professional boundaries. Tomorrow, he agreed. 10 o'clock. I'll have Vivian clear my calendar. He opened her car door, waiting as she settled inside. Before closing it, he leaned down slightly. Drive safely. I will. Good night, Preston. As she drove home, Delilah tried to make sense of the evening, had it been purely business. The restaurant choice, the wine, the personal conversations, none of it felt like her typical client meetings. But Preston Quentin was hardly a typical client. She needed to be careful. This contract could elevate her business to new heights, but only if she maintained professional focus. Whatever she thought she'd felt during dinner, the moments when his gaze lingered, when conversation flowed so naturally, it felt like they'd known each other for years, was probably just her imagination, fueled by good wine and the intoxication of being in the presence of someone so powerful yet unexpectedly thoughtful. Still, as she fell asleep that night, it wasn't auction plans that filled her dreams, but blue eyes that seemed to see straight through her professional facade. Over the next 2 weeks, Delilah found herself at Quentin Pharmaceuticals almost daily. The auction was scheduled 8 weeks out, an aggressive timeline, but one she was confident she could meet. Preston had given her access to whatever resources she needed, including a dedicated workspace in the executive suite and a small team to assist with logistics. What surprised her most was how frequently Preston himself dropped by to check on progress. Sometimes his visits were brief, just a few questions about vendor selections or auction items. Other times, he would pull up a chair and spend an hour discussing ideas, challenging her thinking in ways that inevitably improved the concept. What if we held it at the botanical gardens instead of a hotel ballroom? He suggested one afternoon. More memorable setting, and it aligns with our natural medicine research division. Delilah looked up from her laptop, considering. It could work beautifully, actually, but most of the premier garden spaces book a year in advance. Preston smiled. Let me worry about that. I happen to serve on their board. Of course he did. Delilah was learning that Preston's influence extended far beyond his company. He moved through the city's elite circles with ease, though he seemed to take no particular pleasure in it. You don't enjoy these social connections much, do you? She asked him once, after he'd mentioned attending 3 charity galas the previous month. He looked surprised by her perception. Not particularly. They're necessary networking, but most conversations at these events are performative, everyone positioning themselves, seeking advantages. He paused. That's why I like talking with you. You just say what you think. The comment warmed her more than it should have. As they worked together, Delilah began noticing small things about Preston. How he always remembered details about her previous events without needing reminders. How he kept a photograph of his mother on his desk, angled so only he could see it most of the time. How he treated everyone from Vivian to the mailroom clerk with the same attentive respect. One morning, she arrived to find Preston already in her temporary office, reviewing the drafted auction catalog. "You're here early," she said, setting down her bag. "Never left," he admitted. "Had an emergency conference call with our European division at midnight." Looking closer, she noticed the subtle signs of exhaustion, the faint shadows beneath his eyes, his slightly rumpled shirt. "Have you eaten?" she asked. He glanced up, seeming confused by the question. "I don't remember." Delilah shook her head. "That settles it. We're getting breakfast." Preston raised an eyebrow. "I have a meeting in 30 minutes. Reschedule it," she said firmly, then caught herself. "Sorry, that was presumptuous. I just—" "No, you're right," he interrupted, already reaching for his phone. "Vivian, move my 9:30 to this afternoon." He listened briefly. "Yes, I know she's been waiting 3 weeks for this meeting. Offer my apologies and tell her I'll extend our time to compensate." He hung up, looking at Delilah with amusement. "Happy, impressed that you actually listened," she admitted. "Where can we get good breakfast around here?" 20 minutes later, they were seated in a small cafe 2 blocks from the office. Preston had insisted they walk, saying he needed fresh air after being cooped up all night. In the morning sunlight, away from the formality of the office, he looked younger somehow. "You should take better care of yourself," Delilah said as he devoured a plate of eggs and toast. "Skipping meals and pulling all-nighters isn't sustainable." Preston paused, fork halfway to his mouth. "Are you scolding your client, Miss Davis?" "I'm expressing concern for a person I'm working with," she countered. "The auction will suffer if you collapse from exhaustion." His expression softened. "It's been a while since someone worried about me rather than what I could do for them." The simple honesty of the statement caught her off guard. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked it quickly, then looked up apologetically. "Unfortunately, I have to cut breakfast short, but thank you for the food and the concern." As they walked back to the building, their hands brushed accidentally. Delilah felt an unmistakable current pass between them, and from Preston's quick glance, she knew he'd felt it too. but neither mentioned it as they returned to their respective roles: client and contractor, CEO and event planner. That evening, however, as Delilah was preparing to leave, Preston appeared at her door. "I have tickets to the symphony tomorrow night," he said without preamble. "Mozart and Beethoven. Would you like to join me?" Delilah hesitated. "Is this related to the auction?" A flicker of something vulnerability perhaps crossed his face. "No, this would be outside of our professional relationship," her heart stuttered. "You mean like a date?" "Yes," he said simply. "Like a date." The directness was so typically Preston. No games, no pretense. "I'm not sure that's a good idea," she said carefully. "You're my client. I'm also a man who enjoys your company and would like to spend time with you when we're not discussing centerpieces and silent auction technology." He paused. "But if you're uncomfortable with the idea, I understand completely." Delilah found herself torn. Professional wisdom said to decline, but something else, something that made her pulse quicken, wanted very much to say yes. "If I accept," she said slowly, "we need to be clear that it doesn't affect our working relationship. The auction comes first." Preston nodded. "Absolutely. I respect you too much as a professional to suggest otherwise." She took a deep breath. "Then yes, I'd like to go to the symphony with you." His smile, a real one that reached his eyes, made her momentarily forget all her reservations. The following evening, Preston picked her up in a sleek but understated car that he drove himself, surprising her. "No driver tonight?" she asked, settling into the passenger seat. "I prefer to drive when it's personal time," he explained. "Gives me a sense of normalcy." Delilah smiled, appreciating this glimpse of the man beneath the CEO title. She'd spent extra time getting ready, choosing an emerald dress that complemented her eyes and swept her auburn hair into an elegant updo. "You look beautiful," Preston had said when she opened her door, his gaze taking her in with unconcealed appreciation. "That color suits you perfectly." Now, as they drove through the city, Delilah stole glances at his profile. In a charcoal suit with a subtle blue tie that matched his eyes, he looked every inch the sophisticated billionaire. Yet there was something approachable about him tonight, a relaxed quality she hadn't seen before. "I should confess something," Preston said as they neared the concert hall. "I've been wanting to ask you out since our first meeting." Delilah turned to him, surprised. "Really? But you barely knew me," he shrugged, keeping his eyes on the road. "Sometimes you just know when you want to know someone better, but I waited because I wanted you to see me as more than just your client first." "Is that why you kept dropping by my office? To let me see you?" A smile played at his lips. "Partially, though I genuinely care about the auction." He glanced at her briefly. "But yes, I found myself inventing reasons to talk with you." The admission sent a pleasant warmth through her. "I thought CEOs were supposed to be better at delegating." "We are. I'm making an exception." The way he said it, like she was special enough to break his own rules, made her heart beat faster. At the symphony, they were seated in a private box. The music washed over them, first Mozart's elegant precision, then Beethoven's passionate intensity. Throughout the performance, Delilah was acutely aware of Preston beside her, of his hand occasionally brushing hers on the armrest they shared. During intermission, Preston brought her a glass of champagne. "Are you enjoying it?" "It's magnificent," she said sincerely. "Though I admit my knowledge of classical music is limited." "Mine too, once," he said. "My mother introduced me to it. She played cello not professionally but with real passion. After she got sick and couldn't play anymore, we would listen together." His voice softened at the memory. Music was one of the few pleasures her condition didn't take from her. Delilah touched his arm gently. "She sounds like an amazing woman." She was. He covered her hand with his own. "She would have liked you." The simple statement felt weightier than any compliment she'd received before. After the concert, they strolled to a small restaurant nearby. Over late dinner, their conversation ranged from childhood memories to favorite books to travel dreams. Delilah found herself telling Preston things she rarely shared about her parents' messy divorce, about the year she'd struggled with anxiety in college, about her fear that she might never break through to the level of success she aspired to. "Why event planning?" Preston asked. "With your creativity and organizational skills, you could have chosen many paths." Delilah considered the question. "I love creating perfect moments for people, times when everything aligns to create joy or meaning or connection. In a world with so much chaos and disappointment, being able to deliver exactly what someone hopes for, even just for one night, it feels important somehow." Preston nodded thoughtfully. "That explains why you're so good at it. You genuinely care about the experience you're creating." As the evening ended and Preston drove her home, Delilah felt herself struggling with conflicting emotions. The night had been perfect, easy conversation, shared laughter, moments of surprising vulnerability from both of them. Yet as they approached her apartment building, professional concerns resurfaced. "I had a wonderful time," she said as he walked her to her door, "but I'm still worried about mixing business and personal." Preston stood before her, hands in his pockets. "I understand your concern, but I think we're both professional enough to handle this complexity." He stepped closer, his gaze intent. "Unless you didn't feel what I felt tonight," Delilah swallowed. "That's not it." "Then what are you really afraid of?" The question cut straight to her core fear. "That this isn't real. That I'm just interesting to you because I'm different from the people in your usual circle, or that I'm attracted to you because of who you are rather than who you are." Preston smiled slightly at her phrasing. "You mean my position versus me as a person?" She nodded. "How can we be sure what's real and what's circumstantial?" "We can't be completely sure," he admitted. "But I know that when I'm with you, I'm not thinking about Quentin Pharmaceuticals or my bank accounts. I'm just thinking about the way your eyes light up when you're excited about an idea, or how you call me out when I'm being stubborn." He reached up, gently touching her cheek. "I'm thinking about how much I want to kiss you right now." Delilah's breath caught. Despite all her reservations, she found herself whispering, "I want that too." Preston leaned down, closing the distance between them. His lips met hers in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened as she responded. His hands framed her face with surprising tenderness, while hers gripped the lapels of his suit, drawing him closer. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Preston rested his forehead against hers. "Still worried this isn't real?" Delilah laughed softly. "More confused than ever, actually," he smiled. "Then perhaps we need more data points to reach a conclusion." "Very scientific approach, Mr. Quentin. I am in pharmaceuticals," he reminded her with mock seriousness. "Research is essential." She stepped back slightly, needing to regain perspective. "We should take this slowly. The auction remains the priority during working hours," he finished for her. "I agree completely," Delilah nodded, relieved by his understanding. "Then, good night, Preston." He lifted her hand, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "Good night, Delilah. Sweet dreams." As she watched him walk back to his car, Delilah touched her lips, still tingling from his kiss. She was stepping into complicated territory, she knew. But for the first time in years, she was following her heart rather than her careful plans, and it felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The next 6 weeks passed in a whirlwind of auction preparations, interspersed with increasingly meaningful personal moments. During the day, Delilah and Preston maintained professional boundaries, focusing entirely on creating an exceptional event. but evenings and weekends became their time to explore the growing connection between them. Preston took her sailing on his modest yacht, modest by billionaire standards, which still meant impressively luxurious to Delilah. She took him to her favorite hidden gem restaurants, delighting in introducing him to places where no one recognized the famous CEO. They attended art exhibitions, hiked in a nearby state park, and spent one rainy Sunday afternoon cooking together in his penthouse kitchen, making a spectacular mess while attempting her grandmother's lasagna recipe. Through it all, Delilah found herself falling for the man behind the billions, the Preston who got adorably frustrated when he couldn't master a new skill immediately, who had strong opinions about obscure jazz musicians, who sometimes worked too hard because he genuinely believed in what his company could accomplish. "Do you ever get tired of it?" she asked him one evening as they sat on his terrace, watching the city lights below. The responsibility, the decisions affecting thousands of lives, Preston considered the question seriously. "Sometimes. But then, I remember the letters we receive from patients who can now walk because of our treatments, from parents whose children have futures because of medications we developed." He looked at her. "Those moments make the burden feel like a privilege." It was in these glimpses of his character, his genuine commitment to making a difference, not just building wealth, that Delilah found herself most drawn to him. And yet, as the auction approached, she couldn't entirely silence her doubts. Was their relationship strong enough to survive once their professional connection ended? Would he still find her interesting when she wasn't integral to his daily work life? 2 weeks before the auction, disaster struck. Delilah was in the middle of a venue walkthrough when she received an urgent call from her assistant. "The patient speaker just canceled," Sophie reported breathlessly. "His doctor won't clear him for travel, and the backup speaker is hospitalized with pneumonia." Delilah closed her eyes, fighting panic. The patient testimonial was meant to be the emotional centerpiece of the evening, the moment that would inspire guests to bid generously. "I'll figure something out," she assured Sophie, though she had no idea what. That evening, she paced Preston's living room, outlining the problem. "We need someone who can speak authentically about how your research impacts lives. Without that personal connection, it's just another fancy party with rich people buying overpriced auction items." Preston watched her pace, his expression thoughtful. "What about my mother's story?" Delilah stopped. "What do you mean?" "I could speak about her experience, about watching someone you love suffer from a condition with no treatment, and how that drives our research mission." He hesitated. "I've never spoken publicly about her. It's always felt too personal, but maybe that's exactly what we need, something real." Delilah sat beside him, taking his hand. "Are you sure? That's asking a lot of you, I'm sure." His fingers tightened around hers. "It feels right somehow. Especially with you organizing it." The moment felt significant, Preston trusting her not just with his company's event, but with something deeply personal. On impulse, she leaned forward and kissed him softly. "Thank you for trusting me," she whispered against his lips. His arms encircled her, drawing her closer. "You make it easy," he murmured before capturing her mouth in a deeper kiss. Later that week, Preston invited Delilah to dinner at his penthouse. When she arrived, she found the terrace transformed, twinkling lights strung overhead, a small table set for two with fine china and crystal, soft music playing in the background. "What's all this?" she asked, taking in the romantic scene. "I wanted to do something special," Preston said, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "The auction is almost here, and I wanted to make sure you know that what's between us isn't tied to that project." He led her to the table, pouring champagne into flutes. "These past weeks have been the happiest I can remember, working with you, getting to know you." He took a breath. "I'm falling in love with you, Delilah." The declaration caught her completely off guard. They'd been growing closer, yes, but neither had put such definitive words to their feelings yet. "Preston, you don't need to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I just wanted you to know where I stand. I know you've been worried about what happens after the auction, and I want to be clear. I'm in this for the long haul if you are." Emotion welled in Delilah's chest, joy mingled with lingering uncertainty. "I have feelings for you too, strong ones, but I'm still afraid." "Of what?" he asked softly. "That we're in a bubble. That once I'm not working for you, once we don't have this project connecting us, things will change." Preston took her hands across the table. "Then let's test that theory. After tonight, let's agree not to discuss the auction at all when we're together personally. We'll keep work and personal completely separate until after the event." Delilah considered this. "That could work. And," he continued, "I have another proposal. After the auction, take a week off. Come with me to my cabin in Vermont. No phones, no work talk, just us, seeing if what we have stands on its own." The invitation both thrilled and terrified her. A week away, just the two of them, would definitely answer her questions about their compatibility outside of work. But it also meant fully committing to exploring this relationship. "Okay," she said finally. "Vermont after the auction." Preston's smile was radiant. "Really, really." As she said it, Delilah felt a weight lift. Whatever happened, she was choosing to follow this unexpected path with an open heart. The final days before the auction were a frenzy of activity. True to their agreement, Delilah and Preston kept their personal relationship entirely separate from auction preparations. During the day, they were consummate professionals. Evenings were reserved for their growing relationship, with not a word about centerpieces or sound systems. The separation helped Delilah see more clearly how much she valued Preston beyond their working connection. Their conversations ranged from childhood memories to future dreams, from favorite books to political viewpoints. They didn't always agree, but their discussions were always respectful and often enlightening. She found herself appreciating his sharp mind and thoughtful perspectives as much as his kindness and unexpected sense of humor. The night before the auction, they agreed not to see each other. Delilah needed to focus on last-minute details, and Preston had to prepare his speech about his mother. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said during their goodnight call. "Try to get some sleep. You too, and Preston. Your mother would be proud of you, not just for the foundation, but for the man you are." His voice was husky when he replied, "Thank you, that means more than you know." Auction day dawned clear and perfect. Delilah arrived at the Botanical Gardens at noon, overseeing final preparations with her usual meticulous attention. The space had been transformed into an elegant wonderland, soft lighting illuminating rare flowers, interactive displays showcasing research breakthroughs, string musicians positioned throughout the gardens. Preston arrived at 4, looking so handsome in his tuxedo that Delilah momentarily forgot the checklist she'd been reviewing with staff. "Everything looks incredible," he said, gazing around the transformed space. "You've exceeded every expectation." "Thank you," she said, professional pride evident in her voice. "Are you ready for your speech?" A flash of vulnerability crossed his face. "As ready as I'll be. I've never been this personal in public before." On impulse, she squeezed his hand quickly. "You'll be wonderful." As guests began arriving at 6, Delilah shifted into event manager mode, circulating through the space to ensure everything ran smoothly. She caught glimpses of Preston throughout the evening, greeting major donors, charming potential investors, always the consummate host. Yet whenever their eyes met across the room, his expression softened in a way reserved just for her. The emotional peak of the evening came, as planned, when Preston took the stage to speak about the Foundation's mission. The usual corporate video had been replaced by his personal story, and as he began speaking about his mother's battle with a rare neurodegenerative condition, the room fell completely silent. "I was 19 when she was diagnosed," Preston said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "25 when we lost her. In those 6 years, I watched a brilliant, vibrant woman lose her mobility, her independence, and eventually her ability to communicate. But she never lost her dignity or her hope that someday other families might have better options." He continued, describing how her experience had shaped his vision for the company and foundation. As he spoke, Delilah noticed many guests discreetly wiping away tears. "Today, we have 3 promising treatments in development for conditions like my mother's. Your support tonight directly funds these research initiatives." He paused, his gaze finding Delilah at the back of the room. "Someone very important to me recently reminded me that our work isn't about spreadsheets or stock prices, it's about creating more good moments for people who might otherwise have fewer of them. That's why we're here tonight. That's why every bid matters." The applause was thunderous. As Preston left the stage, guests immediately began bidding more aggressively on auction items. Delilah knew instantly that they would exceed their fundraising goal by a substantial margin. Hours later, as the last guests departed, the final tally confirmed her prediction they'd raised over $3 million, nearly double the previous year's result. "We did it," she said to Preston as they stood in the now quiet garden. The staff was cleaning up, but they had a moment of privacy among the exotic flowers. "You did it," he corrected, taking both her hands in his. "This was your vision, your execution. Your speech made the difference," she insisted. "It was perfect, honest, and powerful." Preston shook his head. "I couldn't have done it without you. Not just the event, but finding the courage to share that story." He lifted a hand to her cheek. "You've changed me, Delilah. Made me remember the person I wanted to be before I got lost in quarterly reports and board meetings." Before she could respond, Vivian approached, tablet in hand. "Sorry to interrupt, but the governor is calling about your donation announcement." Preston sighed. "Take a message, please, Vivian. We'll deal with it tomorrow." Vivian raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Congratulations on a successful event, both of you." As she walked away, Delilah thought she detected a knowing smile. "So," Preston said, turning back to Delilah, "we did agree to take a week off after the auction. My offer of Vermont still stands." Delilah smiled. "I already packed my bag." "It's in my car." His face lit up. "Really?" "No second thoughts, none," she said firmly. "Whatever this is between us, I want to explore it fully without auction plans or professional considerations." Preston's smile was radiant as he pulled her into his arms, not caring who might see. "In that case, Miss Davis, I believe our work here is done. Shall we go find out what we're like when we're just Preston and Delilah?" "I think that sounds perfect, Mr. Quentin." As they walked out of the garden hand in hand, Delilah realized that sometimes the most carefully planned events in life led to completely unexpected outcomes. 8 weeks ago, she'd walked into Quentin Pharmaceuticals hoping for a contract that would elevate her business. She was walking out with that accomplishment and something far more valuable: a chance at love with a man who saw her completely and cherished what he saw. Vermont in early autumn was breathtaking. Preston's cabin, actually a spacious lodge overlooking a pristine lake, provided the perfect setting for them to discover who they were together outside the context of work. They hiked forest trails blazing with fall colors, cooked elaborate meals in the gourmet kitchen, and spent evenings by the fire talking until late into the night. Without the pressures of work or the scrutiny of others, They both relaxed into versions of themselves rarely seen in their professional lives. Delilah discovered that Preston had a surprisingly playful side, challenging her to ridiculous competitions like who could skip stones farther across the lake. She won. Or who could build the better fort out of sofa cushions. He won, using engineering principles she hadn't considered. Preston learned that beneath Delilah's organized, capable exterior was a woman with an artist's soul, someone who could spend hours photographing the perfect pattern of light through autumn leaves or composing poems. She was too shy to share until he gently coaxed them from her. On their third evening, as they sat on the dock watching the sunset paint the lake in fiery colors, Preston broached a subject they'd been circling. "What happens when we go back?" he asked, his arm around her shoulders. Delilah leaned against him. "What do you want to happen?" "I want to keep seeing you, not secretly, openly. I want to take you to dinner and not pretend it's about business. I want to call you in the middle of the day just to hear your voice." He turned to face her. "Basically, I want to keep falling in love with you without complications." She smiled, touched by his directness. "There will still be complications. People will talk. Some will assume I slept my way into your life. Others will think I'm after your money." "And does that bother you?" Delilah considered the question honestly. "It did at first. But I know the truth of how we got here, and the people who matter will see it eventually." She traced his jawline with her finger. "What about you? Are you prepared for people to question your judgment, to suggest you've been distracted from business by a romance?" Preston caught her hand, kissing her palm. "Let them talk. I've spent years making decisions based on what looks appropriate rather than what feels right. I'm done with that." His eyes held hers. "You feel right, Delilah, more right than anything has in a very long time." In that moment, with the lake reflecting the sunset's glory and Preston looking at her with such certainty, Delilah's remaining doubts melted away. "Then let's do this. For real. No more separating work and personal, just us, figuring it out together." His kiss was both tender and passionate, a promise of things to come. Their week in Vermont solidified what both had begun to suspect. They complemented each other in fundamental ways. Preston's strategic thinking balanced Delilah's creative instincts. Her emotional intelligence softened his tendency toward logical detachment. Together, they were stronger, more balanced versions of themselves. On their last night, lying in bed with moonlight streaming through the windows, Delilah confessed her deepest fear. "I'm afraid of losing myself in your world," she whispered. "Your life is so expansive. Mine has been so focused on building my business." Preston propped himself on an elbow, looking down at her seriously. "I would never want you to give up what you've built. Your work isn't just what you do, it's part of who you are. But practically speaking, how would it work? Your company is global. My clients are local." He traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "We figure it out together. Technology makes remote work possible. Perhaps your business could expand to include international events. Or maybe you focus on quality over quantity, taking fewer clients but more meaningful projects." He smiled. "Or you could always plan events for a certain pharmaceutical company on a more permanent basis." "Work for you, you mean?" she asked, uncertain. "With me," he corrected. "As a partner, not an employee. The foundation could use a dedicated event director for our global initiatives." Delilah considered this. "It's an interesting idea, but I want to maintain some independence too." "Of course. I'm just offering options." He kissed her forehead. "We have time to figure out the details. For now, can we agree on the most important part? That we want to be together?" Delilah smiled, pulling him down for a proper kiss. "Yes, that part is non-negotiable." Returning to the city brought new challenges. Their relationship became public knowledge almost immediately when someone photographed them holding hands outside a restaurant. The picture appeared on a business blog with the headline, "Quentin Pharma CEO's New Romance, Business or Pleasure." The resulting speculation was exactly as Delilah had predicted, some suggesting she'd orchestrated the auction assignment to get close to Preston, others implying he'd hired her with personal motives from the start. The more vicious comments questioned her qualifications and his judgment. "I'm sorry about this," Preston said when the article broke. They were having breakfast in her apartment, the offending blog displayed on his tablet. Delilah shrugged, though the comments stung. "We knew this would happen. It will blow over. Still, I hate seeing them drag your professional reputation through the mud. Your work on the auction was exceptional, and the foundation has the donations to prove it," she reminded him. "Actions speak louder than gossip." Preston's expression softened. "How did I get lucky enough to find someone so grounded? You paid attention," she said simply. "Most billionaires wouldn't notice the event planner." He took her hand across the table. "I noticed you the moment you walked into my office. It just took me a while to find the courage to do something about it." Despite the initial gossip, they settled into a relationship that felt increasingly natural. Delilah continued running her event planning business, though she did accept Preston's offer to consult for the foundation's international initiatives. The arrangement allowed her to maintain her independence while expanding her professional horizons. Preston, meanwhile, found himself delegating more effectively at work, creating space for a personal life he'd previously neglected. He started leaving the office by 6 most evenings, joining Delilah for simple pleasures like cooking dinner or watching movies, experiences that felt novel to a man who'd previously worked until exhaustion most nights. 6 months after the auction, Preston surprised Delilah with a weekend trip to Chicago, where a major pharmaceutical conference was taking place. "I know it's not the most romantic destination," he admitted as they checked into their hotel, "but there's something important I want you to see." The following morning, he took her to the conference center where Quentin Pharmaceuticals was unveiling a new treatment, one of the therapies that had been funded by their auction. "We received FDA approval last week," Preston explained as they watched the presentation from the back of the room. "Early trials show a 60% reduction in symptom progression for conditions like my mother's." Delilah squeezed his hand, understanding the significance. "That's incredible. What you're seeing is the real impact of that night you created," he said softly. "This treatment might have taken years longer without the funding we raised." Later, at a celebration dinner with his research team, Delilah watched Preston interact with the scientists and doctors who had developed the treatment. His genuine pride in their work, his detailed knowledge of the challenges they'd overcome, it all reinforced what she'd come to know about him. Behind the billionaire facade was a man driven by purpose, not just profit. As the evening wound down, Preston excused them, saying he wanted to show Delilah the view from the hotel's rooftop garden. When they arrived, she gasped the space had been transformed with hundreds of twinkling lights and flowers. "What is all this?" she asked, turning to find Preston looking uncharacteristically nervous. "I wanted to create a perfect moment," he said, taking her hands. "You've taught me the value of those." Delilah's heart began racing as Preston continued. "8 months ago, you walked into my office and changed everything. You showed me that I'd been living half a life, all work, no joy." He took a deep breath. "I've fallen completely in love with you, Delilah. Your creativity, your integrity, your kindness, the way you challenge me to be better, the way you see me not as a CEO or a billionaire, but just as Preston." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. Delilah's breath caught as he dropped to one knee. "I know it hasn't been that long," he acknowledged, "but I've never been more certain of anything. I want to build a life with you, one filled with purpose and laughter and love." He opened the box, revealing a stunning emerald ring surrounded by diamonds. "Delilah Davis, will you marry me?" Tears filled Delilah's eyes as she looked down at the man who had completely upended her carefully ordered life and made it infinitely better. "Yes," she whispered, then more strongly, "yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to kiss her, Delilah thought about the strange, wonderful journey that had brought them here. She'd walked into Quentin Pharmaceuticals hoping for a contract that would elevate her business. Instead, she'd found something far more valuable, a partner who celebrated her strengths, supported her dreams, and loved her completely for exactly who she was. Later that night, lying in Preston's arms in their hotel suite, she asked him something she'd always wondered. "Why did you decide to oversee the auction personally? You could have delegated it to anyone." Preston smiled, twirling a strand of her hair around his finger. "Honestly, I saw your proposal come across my desk and something about it caught my attention. The creativity, the thoughtfulness, it stood out. I was curious about the person behind those ideas." He kissed her forehead. "Best decision I ever made." "So you were interested before we even met?" she asked, surprised. "Intrigued, at least," he admitted. "But the moment you walked in and started challenging my ideas instead of just agreeing with everything I said, that's when I knew you were special." Delilah laughed. "I was just doing my job. You were being yourself. Authentic, passionate, unintimidated." His expression grew serious. "Do you know how rare that is in my world? Everyone wants something from me. You just wanted to create the best possible event. And now I just want you," she said softly, reaching up to trace his jawline. His smile was tender as he captured her hand, kissing the ring that now adorned it. "You have me. Completely." 1 year later, Delilah stood in the very garden where their famous auction had taken place. This time, it was transformed for a different purpose: their wedding. Only 60 guests were present, close friends and family rather than business associates or social connections. Preston waited for her beneath an arch of white roses, looking more nervous than he had during billion-dollar negotiations. When he saw her walking toward him in a simple but elegant gown, his face transformed with such joy that several guests were moved to tears. Their vows were personal and heartfelt. Preston promised to always see and cherish the woman behind the competent professional, to support her dreams as fervently as his own. Delilah vowed to remind him of life's perfect moments, to be his partner in both purpose and pleasure. "When you walked into my office that day," Preston said, his voice thick with emotion, "I was looking for someone to plan an event. Instead, I found the love of my life. You reminded me that the most valuable things can't be measured in dollars or stock prices. They're measured in moments of connection, in purpose shared, in love freely given." Delilah's voice trembled as she responded, "You showed me that sometimes the most carefully planned events lead to completely unexpected outcomes. I came seeking a client and found my heart's home instead. Thank you for seeing me, really seeing me from that very first day." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, cheers erupted from their gathered loved ones. The celebration that followed was, not surprisingly, perfectly planned. Delilah couldn't help bringing her professional touch to their special day. But what made it truly magical wasn't the exquisite food or thoughtful details. It was the tangible love connecting the bride and groom. During their first dance, Preston held her close, whispering in her ear. "Happy?" Delilah nodded, her cheek against his chest. "Perfectly. Even though marrying me means dealing with board meetings and business trips and public scrutiny." She leaned back to look at him. "Even though. Because it also means having you, the real you, not the CEO version, to come home to every night." Preston's eyes shone with emotion. How did planning one charity auction lead to all this? I think you know the answer, she said with a smile. Sometimes the most unexpected connections turn out to be the most meaningful ones. As he twirled her across the dance floor, Delilah reflected on their unconventional journey. She'd always been a planner, organizing events down to the minute, anticipating every contingency. Yet the best thing in her life had been completely unplanned, falling in love with the billionaire whose charity auction she'd been hired to organize. Some perfect moments, it seemed, couldn't be planned at all. They could only be recognized and cherished when they unexpectedly arrived.